Hello everyone, welcome to Carnivorous Plants Hub. Today I'm going to be bringing you a video all about watering your Venus flytraps. This is going to be kind of a big watering guide. I'm going to be going over a lot of information, so this video might run just a little bit longer, but I just wanted to kind of cover everything that I know and everything that I've learned about watering. I have these guys in here with me today just for something for you to look at while I'm videoing, so you can kind of take a look at them while I'm talking, but we're going to be going over kind of all this equipment and stuff I have back here and just kind of going over some of my best practices for watering. Real quick guys, before we get going, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I apologize I haven't had as many videos as much as I like lately, but my kids are getting back into school and back into sports and I just haven't had the time to shoot videos. I got another video coming out really soon here that's going to talk about dormancy, so watch out for that. But I just thank you so much for being here. I just went over 5,000 subs and that's absolutely amazing, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much for everyone who's been loyal to me since the beginning, and make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. All those things help me so much sort of on my journey here to starting my own carnivorous plant nursery. I still have making my own substrate in the works, so I'll be making substrate that works for Venus flytraps and other carnivorous plants, so keep on the lookout for that. I've hit a few speed bumps, but it is coming, I promise. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. Let's get into this video. First thing I want to disclose is that I'm in a 6A, 6B-ish zone. So I do get into the negatives, -5, -10 degrees over the winter. Occasionally, it's not constant, it's not all the time, but we are below freezing most of the time during winter, under that 30-degree mark, 32 degree. So just so you kind of know where I live and what my experience is, hopefully that'll help some of you understand kind of where you live. If it's similar conditions, similar growing zones, then you'll be able to kind of use my tactics and they'll work really good for you. I'm going to kind of cover what I believe works in warmer areas too, so we're gonna kind of talk about that, so no worries. But one of the first things I want to talk about and kind of get out of the way is what we're going to water with. One of the biggest mistakes people make as new growers is they want to water their Venus flytrap with tap water. And tap water is probably one of the biggest no-nos. Most cases, tap water is not going to be good enough to water your Venus flytraps with. The tap water contains a lot of nutrients and it contains a lot of minerals that are harmful to Venus flytraps. So you want to really avoid any type of tap water. There is some tap water out there that could work, but the only way for you to really know that is to use a TDS meter. And we're going to talk about this here in just a little bit, so keep that in mind. The TDS meter is important if you want to use your tap water. You do need to measure that tap water before you use it, so we'll bust out the TDS meter here in just a second. But another thing that's really important to remember is that you want to use either a distilled water, reverse osmosis water, or rainwater. So those are some of the three most popular forms of water that people use to water their Venus flytraps. So distilled water you can get from big box stores. I got some distilled water here for you to look at so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So here's the distilled water from Walmart. I think this is like great value. This is only like $1 for a gallon. So it's really affordable. It's not too expensive, especially if you just have a couple of Venus flytraps like this here. This will probably water these guys for, I don't know, a couple weeks in the middle of summer, even longer as we're going into the colder weather. So reverse osmosis water is a filtration system that you can get either above or below your sink. They're a little more in depth and they're a little more expensive, so definitely do some research. If you want to look into reverse osmosis, that's usually what people do if they have a lot more carnivorous plants. It's a good suggestion if you're trying to get a lot of distilled water. It comes right out of the tap, so it's much easier to get. Rainwater is sort of like your tap water, where we want to make sure we're measuring with our TDS meter before we use any rainwater. Rainwater can be harmful if it's coming off of your roof because it's going through gutters, and it's also coming off of roofs that have some chemical treatments on them. So you do want to be considerate and measure the water before you use any rainwater, especially if it's coming off of your roof and out of your gutter. But real quick, let's go ahead and talk about exactly that, the TDS meter, because this is going to be really important for you to know exactly whether or not your water is going to be good enough for you to use, if it's coming out of your faucet or if it's coming off of the roof from rain. Even rainwater that doesn't come off of your roof. In some areas, the pollutants in the air can actually impact it and make it not usable. So even if it's not coming off your roof, I do still suggest that you measure it with the TDS meter. So is my tap water, and this one actually poured out of my smart zero water pitcher over here, and we're going to talk about that zero water pitcher in just a second because it's awesome. So here we go. So we have some tap water. So what you're looking for is my tap water is filtered. It's not filtered perfectly to get all the impurities out of it, but so here's my tap water measurement. So you can see right now it's measuring 79, 80, and that's going to continue to probably go up just a little bit as I leave that in there. But that's usually about where my tap water measures when it comes through the filter, is sort of in that high 70s, low 80s, and that's too high. Anything above 50 parts per million right there, that's too high for a Venus flytrap. And personally, I don't even like to do it above 30. I try to keep mine completely under 30. Okay, it's reset. So here's some water that came out of the zero water filter. So you can see it's down in there. There's no movement. This is basically, it's not distilled water, it's filtered water, but it's basically zero on the parts per million. So there's no minerals, no nutrients or anything in this water, nothing added. So this is perfect water for watering my Venus flytraps. That's how you use a TDS meter. I have a link for one of these in the description. You can get these for about $10 to $15 if you find one on sale. But the cool thing is now we're going to talk about the smart, or I'm sorry, I keep calling it a smart, but it's not smart, it's a zero water pitcher here. The zero water pitcher I have absolutely fallen in love with. I'm going to show you some footage here of me using this, but the way it works is very, very simple. You got this unit here. This is the filter. The filter just screws in to this top unit. You put this in the basin, and then you just put your tap water in here, in this little basin here, and then the water drips down out the bottom and comes out as zero. And it actually filters out all the impurities. These are about 30 bucks, and the filter is about 15 bucks. What I have noticed is that I have not had to replace this filter yet, and I would probably say that I've made close to 20 gallons of zero water, and it's still giving me this zero water that I just showed you. That's a pretty good value to me. That's about $20 worth at the store. I won't have to buy the $30 pitcher anymore, but at some point I will have to replace this filter here. I'm guessing after 30-40 gallons I'll probably have to replace the filter, which is about 15 bucks. But if you just have this many Venus flytraps, this could be something that really works for you. And it also doubles as a water pitcher for having water in your fridge. So you can just put the lid on the pitcher, so it kind of doubles as good drinking water, but it also you can use it for watering your carnivorous plants or your Venus flytraps. The other thing that's pretty neat about this is you can save yourself 10-15 bucks because it does come with its own TDS meter. I don't use this one. It works just fine. We can even kind of throw it in real quickly just to see how comparative it is. Oops, you're not supposed to dip the whole thing in there like I just did. Let's see. So the reading's really close. You got 0.81, which the other one I think was right around 0.79, 0.80. Let's see if this resets. And then there we go. The zero water gives me 0. So we've kind of shown you with 2 TDS meters here. They're measuring about the same. One tip with measuring water out of a TDS meter is make sure that it's about room temperature. If it's too cold or too hot, you can get false readings on your TDS meters. So it is really important that you make sure that you're not doing that at a really hot or really cold temperature with the TDS meter. And I do strongly recommend the zero water pitcher for your carnivorous plants, your Venus flytraps. Whether you have 1 plant or whether you have 10 plants, it actually is pretty good until you get up into the really high, maybe 20-30 plants. Then it might be a little much to have to replace this filter all the time. But this is a solid investment for your carnivorous plant collection. I strongly recommend it. I got a link in the description. It coming with the TDS meter is just kind of the cherry on top. So you can detect when this filter needs to be changed. And you can detect your rainwater. You can detect your, look at this fly. What a crazy fly. What's he thinking? He's not going to last long in here, but yeah, really cool little system. The other thing that I actually have a water distiller. It actually distills a gallon of water every 4 hours, and I'll put a link to one of those to that guy in the description as well, because it's actually really cool. I use it as well. I actually on the weekends I use a kind of a combination of this And this probably gets me a gallon of water in about 15-20 minutes. So it's pretty efficient, it's pretty cool. You fill up this basin and you can kind of walk away. The water distiller, it takes about 4 hours, but you press a button, you forget about it, you come back 4 hours later and you got yourself a gallon of distilled water. So it is set it, forget it, which is pretty cool. And I'm guessing with that, there's no filter that you really have to change. There's some charcoal you need to put in there, but I think that doesn't need to be changed except for every like 100, 200 gallons. So once you buy that distiller, it can give you basically unlimited water for a very long time without needing to replace anything. So they are a little more expensive. They run around probably $80 to $100, but they will give you that unlimited distilled water. And I don't know about you guys, but I really hate going to the big box stores. I hate going to Walmart, grocery stores. So if I can avoid them in any way, I'm going to do that. So these are great for that. You can still go to the grocery store. What we found during the pandemic sometimes was people were going to the grocery store and there wasn't any. You can see in my video here, oftentimes I go to the store and there is no distilled water left. So that can be really frustrating. Your plants can die. So having these on hand in those instances can be really, really useful. All right, now that we've covered what to water your plants with, I think it's really important that we talk more specifically about how to water your Venus flytraps. What to look for, when to water them, being in different climates. You can see this crazy fly here. He's going to interrupt me. He's going to bug me. But in different climates, obviously you need to water them different amounts. When it's really cold outside, when it's moderately cold, when it's hot, it's going to require different amounts of water. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here today. One of the things that I want to point out and I want to call out right away is that one of the biggest tips that I can give you for watering a Venus flytrap is knowing and understanding the weight of your planter or your pot. Once you understand whether or not your plant needs water, feel the weight of it. If you know it needs water because you can feel in the substrate that it's really dry, and you know that it's really dry and it needs water, learn the weight of what it feels like when it's dry. Because if you learn the weight of your pot when it's dry, and you know the weight of your pot right after you water it, so water your Venus flytrap, and then pick up your planter again and feel it and understand the weight of that when it's full of water, because that will make it so that you never have to stick your finger in the substrate again. You never have to guess again whether or not your plant needs water or doesn't need water. You will know instantly by coming up, lifting this. Like this one here, I can feel that this doesn't need water because it feels slightly heavy. So I wouldn't water this yet. I wouldn't put water in my tray yet. So it's really important to know and understand the weight of your pot when it's empty versus when it's full, and that's going to make watering Venus flytraps much, much simpler. Now, in order to get to that point, obviously there is a bit of a learning curve. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about a couple different methods of watering. One of the biggest and probably most controversial ways of watering is top watering versus tray watering. So a lot of people like to top water, which is simply, grabbing your watering unit here and then just kind of watering the top, right? That's basically top watering. One of the most common methods of watering with Venus flytraps, and the method that I also use, is tray watering. So I like to make sure that I keep the water in the tray, and what that does is it makes sure it keeps your roots nice and wet, but it doesn't get the top of your plant super wet and keep it wet at the top all the time. And the reason you don't want the top of your wet all the time is because of something called crown rot. Too much water at the top of your plant and around the top up here can actually kill your plant. It can rot it out and create crown rot. I've lost a couple of Venus flytraps to that. I have a video actually about crown rot, so go ahead and go check that. I got a link in the description. You really don't want that to happen. What happens is everything starts to turn black really rapidly, really fast, and it all just kind of dies off almost instantly within like a couple days once it gets that rot. So it's really important. What I recommend is that you fill your tray of water with about an inch, half inch to an inch of water, and then you keep an eye on it. If that water completely dries up within a day or two, you're okay once it's completely dried up to probably put a little bit more water into that tray. If these do not soak up all that water after 2 days, I remove them completely from the tray. If this plant is sitting in water for more than 2 days, I completely remove it from the tray because I no longer want it to be sitting in stagnant water. I'm going to now let the water come at the bottom of the pot. I've got the holes down here. I'm going to now let the water that's sitting in there start to drain out because I don't want that water sitting in there anymore. Once I come back and I lift it up and I recognize that it's light and it needs water, I'll put it back in the tray where the water is, and maybe I'll need to add some more at that point. But do not leave these sitting in a tray of water for more than a couple days. which leads to one of the most popular questions I get, which is, what do you do when it's raining outside? So when it's raining outside, I don't leave them in a tray. If it's middle of summer and it's a summer rain, and I know that it's gonna be raining for a few hours and then it goes away, yeah, I'll just leave them in there, that's no big deal. But let's say it's earlier or middle fall and you have a week-long rainstorm that's coming, you wanna remove them from that tray because you don't want them being top watered by the rain and then also sitting in this tray getting bottom watered as well, because this tray is going to stay full and your plant's going to be getting water from the top and it's going to be getting too much water. So I strongly recommend that when the rain comes, you don't need to put them out of the way, you don't need to get them out of the rain, they're fine, they'll do just great in the rain, but just pull them out of the tray so that the water can continue to drain out the bottom. If you set it on a table, make sure that table doesn't puddle up. Make sure it's in a place where this water is going to continue to kind of drain and go away. So top watering. So when do I top water? I do top water. I don't top water frequently. I do it about once a month. And the reason I like to top water is, especially with these Venus flytraps, because I keep these guys out in the elements. So what happens is a lot of leaves are falling, a lot of debris is falling into these. So what happens is that sometimes some minerals and nutrients can kind of build up into the top of these plants. So what I like to do is I like to just take this, water these probably once a month really well, and do more of a flush than anything. So even though I'm top watering them, to me personally it's more of a flush, just to kind of flush those nutrients and minerals out the bottom. I usually won't put it in the tray after I top water. I'll let it sit out on the table so that water can kind of flush out the bottom and it doesn't soak it back up from sitting in the tray. I do that once a month with them, just to help kind of flush them out a little bit. Other than that, that's the only time that I top water anymore. I used to top water more when I lived in a hotter climate, but I don't anymore now that I live in a cooler climate, because they tend to hold that water at the top longer than when you're in a hotter climate. If you're in a really hot climate, I honestly don't think it matters whether you tray water or top water, because that water goes away so quickly that it's not going to impact the plant negatively. The benefit of tray watering when it's really hot is that water is going to stay a little bit longer than the top water will. So tray watering can be more beneficial in the superheat, just because you want that water to sit there for more than 3 or 4 hours. It might actually sit there for a couple of days when you're tray watering in the heat. If not, then you can just add more water. When it starts to cool off, this is really important. You must change your watering habits. If you continue to water in the fall like you did in the summer, you're probably going to kill your plant from rot. So it's really important that you understand the weight, that you understand how it feels when it needs water, because if you continue to water and overwater these in the fall when it starts to get cold, that's when root rot becomes a real big problem. Crown rot can become a really big problem. You can get root rot too, but that's less common. The most common is the crown rot. So make sure as the temperatures cool down, you know the weight of your pot. That's the most important thing. Or if you don't know the weight of your pot yet, you're making sure that you're feeling the top of your substrate. If you can put your finger down in about a 1/2 inch and it feels like it's dry 1/2 inch down, then you know that this needs water. If the top is a little dry but you feel down and it's still really wet, just kind of a little bit down, then you know that that's probably still wet enough. You can probably wait one more day. But do make sure that as the temperatures cool down, that you're giving it significantly less water. That which kind of leads me as you go into dormancy. Dormancy, they need significantly less water. Really important. When it gets really cold, especially here when we're down in the 30s and 20s, it's extremely important that you're only giving them a little bit of water. A couple died during dormancy because I didn't really understand these cold temperatures as well as I do now. So make sure you're not overwatering them in the winter time during dormancy. One other thing I wanted to call out real quick here, and this is just more of a tip than anything, these are really useful. Having these watering cans that have this long spout, and maybe I'll show you some footage of how I use this, but man, being able to kind of get this into the cracks and in between plants, or maybe the plant is behind, especially if you're storing your water in these gallon jugs. These are really cool with these long necks on them, and they're really useful for watering. I didn't used to use this, and I started using this, and it kind of changed everything with watering. It just made everything so much easier. So just a tip there. I'll have a link for one of those in the description if you want to check that out. They're super cheap, they're really affordable, but they make watering so much easier, especially if you have a lot of plants that you're constantly watering. It can just make, especially if you need like targeted watering, that makes it really easy. But yeah, guys, everything that I talked about today, the link is in the description. I just wanted to thank you guys again for being here. I appreciate it so much. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. All that stuff really helps me so much on my journey with my carnivorous plants. I think these Venus flytraps here are starting to get pretty close to dormancy. You can see they're starting to get a little bit faded. They've been in like some low 40s temperatures already, so dormancy is coming. So be on the lookout for my dormancy video. I'm really excited to do that. That's one of my biggest questions I get is about dormancy. They're right up there with water, and that's why I did this video today. But again, thank you guys so much. Look for some more plant updates coming here real soon. Get out the dormancy video here real soon, and some other stuff. But I'll be getting out some more videos here in the next week, and just keep on the lookout for that. So thanks so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye.